Hello and welcome to State of the Union. I'm Stefan Grobe in Brussels. It's July, and if you thought activity would wind down with the beginning of the summer, well, you better think again. Election stunners in France and the United Kingdom provided totally different readings of people's political mood. The political groups in the European Parliament kept struggling for partners and alliances ahead of their opening session in Strasbourg in less than 2 weeks. And Belgium handed the rotating EU presidency to longtime Brussels nemesis Hungary. The whims of the calendar had it that Viktor Orbán's government is now in charge of the EU agenda, which is like the fox guarding the henhouse, as one observer said. This week, Orbán also visited Ukraine and launched a new right-wing alliance, Patriots for Europe, to potentially become the biggest haven for like-minded parties in the European Parliament. So much activity for one purpose: make Europe great again.
A mostani hanyatlást, az erőnk fogyását meg akarjuk állítani, és ismét erősödni akarunk, akkor nekünk is nagyjá kell válni. Hát hogy versenyezhetnénk egy magát nagyjá tevő Amerikával, hogyha egyébként mi magunk nem válunk nagyjá?
Europe's greatness, to use Viktor Orbán's words, also depends on how the EU acts on the international stage and in major crisis spots around the world. This week, it was relatively quiet in Ukraine and Gaza, which allowed the international community to pay more serious attention to the situation in Sudan, which is devastating. For more than a year, the violent conflict between the Sudanese army and rebel forces has displaced hundreds of thousands of people who basically have nothing to eat. Several UN agencies issued urgent warnings.
We are in a race against time, not only to have enough resources, but also to be able to deliver these resources to people who are on the verge of starvation.
Just days ago, the International Rescue Committee produced a Sudan crisis alert to highlight the trajectory of this humanitarian catastrophe. The report deplores diplomatic failures to address the disaster and presses for a total reset of the humanitarian response. For more on this, I'm now joined by Etisas Yusuf, Country Director for Sudan at the International Rescue Committee. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
So, we hear a lot about the humanitarian catastrophe in Sudan. Give us a sense of just how bad it is.
I believe Sudan is really going through a very difficult time. Half of the population of Sudan, they are facing all of them are food insecure at IPC level, and almost like 750,000 those they are really facing starvation or hunger. And with that massive displacement and rapid displacement is really putting Sudan is at the top of any humanitarian crisis. And as you see from our recent alert being released, we are really trying for calling for attention for the crisis, because it seems the humanitarian community, they completely failed Sudan and Sudanese.
Who is to blame for this situation? Who failed the people of Sudan?
The continuing fighting and the two parties that refuse to stop and sit and try to overcome their problems is one contributing factor. And also the pressure from the international community is also contribute a lot to put pressure for them to silence the weapons. And also Sudan facing a huge funding issues and problems. Out of 2.8 billion that is being requested for the humanitarian response plan for Sudan, is being funded so far by 16% only.
Why is there such a lack of attention on the crisis internationally?
I guess it is multiple competing priorities with multiple crises that is going on in globally. You can name them: is Gaza, Ukraine, Yemen, Syria. And also, I do believe the geophysical position of Sudan is not that appealing and having the great attention. And I do believe that with that large crisis, we should really get the enough attention that we have it, even in the media.
And what should the international community and the European Union in particular do to help?
Yeah, I guess for me, I do believe the EU and the member states have played a leading role in the international response to the crisis in Sudan, including recently they organized in April the Paris conference, and also they ramping up the humanitarian effort. Additional to that, we are really asking the EU to put more diplomatic weight behind the securing ceasefire and also humanitarian access and strengthening their engagement with the regional actors. Because at this time, political pressure is really needed.
All right, Etisas Yusuf, Country Director for Sudan at the International Rescue Committee. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you very much.
To a different topic. This week, the Netherlands ended the Slave Memorial Year, commemorating the abolition of slavery in 1863. The main ceremony took place in Amsterdam's Oosterpark, with Prime Minister Mark Rutte attending on his last day in office. For over 300 years, adults and children from various parts of Africa were abducted and shipped across the Atlantic by Dutch slave traders. The former Dutch colonies of Suriname and Caribbean islands like Aruba and Curaçao owe their economic wealth to the forced labor of slaves. With the memorial year, the Dutch government wanted to contribute to permanently increase knowledge of an underexposed part of the country's history. The government also made apologies and reparations. July the 1st is now called Keti Koti, the day the chains were broken. That's it for this edition. I'm Stefan Grobe. Thank you for watching. Have an excellent week.